Hey guys, Mike Toy, Bonsai Boise. So, I'm going to show you how I make my bonsai soil these days. I've made a couple of videos in the past about how I do it, and it's still pretty similar to that, but I'm always tinkering with it, and I'm sometimes customizing it depending on the type of tree that I'm working with. But generally speaking, it's pretty similar to the one I did a couple years ago, with a couple of other exceptions. And I'm going to point out some things that you should think about if you're going to make your own bonsai soil, regardless of anything I tell you or anything else that you see online. So I'm going to go ahead and put on my mask so I'm not breathing in all this crazy stuff when I'm making the soil, and I'll show you what I'm doing. So first thing I'll point out is I try to find a really open, well ventilated place, because this stuff really makes a mess. This absorb in particular is what makes the biggest mess, and I'll show you how that looks. But these are the main ingredients that I use. I just use this absorb floor dry. I get it at a auto parts store. Just get it at Shucks O'Reilly's. Perlite, yes, I opened it upside down, I guess. Usually you find the smaller bags of this stuff for about $5 at any store, but I found this giant bag for, I think it was 10 or 15 bucks at some other place around town here, smaller store. Also, volcanic rock, pretty small, about like that. And then just regular pine march. I want to kind of look around though, because this comes in all shapes and sizes. Look for this stuff here, smaller particles like that. It'll make your life a lot easier, believe me, because I've done it before where I've gotten the wrong size and it's, you know, just a little bigger, and it just wreaks havoc when you're trying to repot and you're using your chopstick and you're trying to work it in. You got this one giant, you know, pine bark here and there. It just messes it up. So what I do, so I've got this guy here. This is my sifter, and I got this at a I think it was like a back to school supplies section at a store. It was like 15 bucks, but see, it's just got little holes here. Let me show you how it works. I'm gonna try and do this one-handed here. Oops, there we go. Again, doing this one-handed, so bear with me, but watch the cloud of dust that comes from this. Hopefully you can see that. It's a little windy, so it's actually not showing up real well, but if you can't see it, you'll just have to take my word for it. It makes a heck of a mess. So, just to give you an idea, I did 2 or 3 loads of that so far, and I've got this stuff just kind of all over me. That's just from where I poured it in before I even picked it up and sifted it. So, really small stuff. But one other ingredient that I don't have shown here that I have been using a little bit of lately is just peat moss. And I get that just in a big size bag like that. But I add that because it's got some nutrients in it, and it's got some water retention properties to it. So typically when you buy a plant at a store, it's just got peat moss. It's about all it's in it. Maybe peat moss and just a tiny bit of perlite. You see those little white dots in it. So you don't want to overdo it with that, but I like to put a little bit of it in. Now, a couple quick words of caution on all this stuff. And I know I'm talking more than I'm showing here, but the important part to realize is when you go online and you look up how to make bonsai soil, everybody's got an opinion, including me, and you will develop one too. But the thing to keep in mind constantly is that even though the opinions are different and somewhat, maybe even some people get a little confrontational about it, remember that it depends a lot on your climate. So your location has so much to do with it. If you live in Florida compared to Idaho, you don't want something like peat moss that's going to retain a lot of water because it just rains so much in Florida. In Idaho, however, we're in the desert, so a little bit of water retention helps. So just kind of get to know what works for you and keep some of those factors in mind. Also, the type of tree that you're using it on plays a big part too. Tropical trees tend to like a little bit more water than, you know, like I'm trying to think of a good desert tree, but you know, something that's more acclimated to a desert type area. So just try and keep all those things in mind. But the general rules of thumb are that all trees like well draining soil. I have gotten away from I guess some people like the practice of using all non-organics, and there's nothing wrong with it. I don't do it anymore though. I like to use organics in mine because it adds a lot of nutrients that plants need in case I don't fertilize on time or correctly or whatever. And I can get away with it just because I know my environment and my watering schedule. So those are my opinions and thoughts on making soil. So let me mix some of this up here, and then I'll show you what the end result looks like once I've kind of done it all to proportion, which, by the way, I don't have any specific formula anymore. I kind of just do it by feel and by look. So let me get to it and I'll show you what it looks like. Whew. Okay, so I just finished up here. I'll give you a look at this, but I'll show you some of the carnage. So on this board, the reason I used this board is I would set my sifter down on it and I'd pour the materials into the sifter. Then I would pick it up and come over here and sift it. But I did this just to kind of give you a look at just how much little dusty junk is in all this stuff. That's before I sift it. That's before I even pick it up and start shaking it. So once I pick it up and start shaking it, and this probably doesn't even do it justice because, you know, it's on dirt already. But you can kind of tell because the dirt there is lighter and it's a little darker over here where I'd sifted out the volcanic rock, and then whiter where I was doing the perlite and the absorb. So definitely wear a mask even outside, and I'm not saying that for COVID reasons because I don't wear a mask for COVID reasons. Yeah, I'm one of those guys. But do it for this reason, because this is for real. That stuff will actually get in your lungs. I tried it one time without a mask. I was outside, thought it was ventilated enough, but I still ended up breathing some in, and I was coughing for days. The absorb in particular is pretty nasty stuff. So that's my word to the wise on that. Now, enough of that. Let me show you the finished product here. So again, that's just perlite, absorb, volcanic rock, and pine bark. Now at times, I will supplement other things into this. Like occasionally I'll use pumice if I can find a good deal on pumice. I don't find a lot of good deals on it, honestly. I'm sure there's some places out there that do it, but I don't find a lot of good deals on it. I just find these little bags, maybe like, you know, that big or so. I don't know what that equals, but you know, for $5. And as you can see, the amount of soil I make, that's not going to cut it. So but when I can, I'll supplement in some pumice, and then also there's some bonsai specific mix that I sort of featured on a video I did just recently with some new Japanese maple saplings. So I'll supplement some of that in there sometimes too, but again, that stuff's like $5 a bag, so I don't always add that to my general mix. This is my general mix right here. So couple last things to think about just for yourself as you're doing it. As far as proportions, you know, is it 2 to 1, 1 to 4, whatever? I don't have a specific formula really to it, but as a general rule, I would just do equal parts. I would start with equal parts: 1 part perlite, 1 part absorb, 1 part pine bark, and 1 part volcanic rock. And then from there, kind of gauge it, you know, look at it, feel it, use it on something, see how it goes. You might want to add more pine bark or more whatever. So it really is kind of a specific deal, and I think that's why there's so much arguing online when you go on there. Just post your opinion on bonsai soil on any forum and you'll instantly see what I mean. Everybody's got an opinion and they get all fired up about it, and it's not really necessary because it's just different depending on where you live and what kind of trees you're dealing with and what your watering schedule is, not just how often you water, but when do you water? Do you water in the morning versus at night? You know, it evaporates slower at night versus in the morning. So there's just a lot of things to think about. But I wouldn't get too caught in the weeds about it. I mean, I wouldn't try and overthink it. Just experiment. Just try some and maybe use this or something else that you saw that you liked as a starting point, and then customize it from there depending on what goes well and what doesn't. And I guess one other thing I'll point out, the absorb stuff. I've got mixed feelings on that, because I have experienced at times where if you get too much absorb, like let's say you can mix it all day long and do your best to kind of, I'll call it shuffling the deck, but at times it might clump up here or there or whatever. And that can happen in a bonsai pot too. And I've had a few instances where for whatever reason, it starts to get kind of mushy, like maybe halfway into the pot, and the plant won't grow roots into it. So I don't know all the reasons behind it. It takes a while for it to get to that point, and sometimes by the time you realize it, it's too late. So just be careful with the absorb. Don't overdo it on that. And if you have trouble, you know, if you do it and you think a plant isn't doing well, check that. That's something worth looking at. So it took me a few times to figure that out. It's rare. I think it's happened twice that I can think of. But anyways, that's it in a nutshell. Feel free to leave me some comments, you know, constructive comments on mixes that work for you, and you know, any questions that you have about this. The one ingredient, last thing I'll say, one ingredient I do not include is Academa, if I'm saying that right. And it's not that I have anything against it, it's that I've never found it anywhere around here, and it's really expensive, and so I didn't order it online. But otherwise, that's good stuff too from what I've read and heard. So anyways, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good day.